Hello everyone, welcome to week 12 of the No One Asked podcast. We are now officially on YouTube. We have a camera, we're set up, and we both have performance anxiety. My hands are sweating more than they have any other week.
I'm throwing my headphones around, not sure what buttons to press. It's all over the place.
I have no idea what to do, so we're going to use it as like a third person. So you're listening in on a conversation, so hopefully that's not too awkward, but I mean we can't stand staring straight at the camera. I don't think anyone would like to see that, but
we are not news reporters.
Yeah, we're not.
We're pals.
Exactly. So the body language is going to be relaxed, but I've got performance anxiety. So, all right, we're officially done with week 9 of the NFL season.
Yes, week 9 over. The biggest upset of the season, besides Browns being disappointing per usual.
Yeah. What do you think that was?
That would definitely have to be the Ravens versus Patriots game.
That's right, there we go.
That was
my memory failing me.
Fantastic game.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, obviously I missed it. I think I was at work, but just coming out and seeing that the Ravens had not only been competitive, but were actually in the game and winning was
they led for the entire game.
Oh, yeah.
There wasn't a minute in which the Patriots led, which is a first for them the entire season, and then didn't even allow Pats back into it.
I know, that's the most impressive part, and it's not even like Mark Ingram had a good game and everything, but really it was down to Lamar, and that's the most impressive thing, that a second-year quarterback went out there and played the greatest defense in a long time in the NFL and did what he did against them. It's really impressive.
Yeah, it completely dismantled, and I think, there's so much backlash and whatever coming back, and so much pride too for Lamar Jackson for how far he's come along since his first start last season, like coming from a running back to now he got his 2 rushing touchdowns, but a great quarterback that has beaten the Patriots.
Exactly.
Put 37 points on him, which they were averaging just under 7 points a game coming into this.
Yeah.
Which is mental.
I know, and that's the thing. At the time, I hated the talk that he was just a running back. But now that you look back, like the steps that he's made, the passes that he can now make, he has really turned from like really a running quarterback to a genuine dual threat.
He's completely evolved, his entire game.
And that's the most impressive part. And if it continues, the Ravens are in a very great spot, particularly going into playoffs. They'll have a lot of unpredictability, which is what helped them beat the Pats, but it's insane. It's just going to be really good. But, I mean, looking back, my mid-season predictions for them was, I think I had them... At this point this season, I had them at 4-3, so they've come out and really shocked. I think the Browns failing has also obviously hurt a lot of people, but the Ravens have been impressive.
But even in saying that, we thought the Browns were going to be better, and they did beat the Ravens, so that doesn't really influence the Ravens' record up until this point. Like, it's just been the unpredictability, just the dominance, especially in those early games for the Ravens, has just been unbelievable.
It has, and that's what makes the Ravens so impressive in a way, is because I looked at their defense and they'd lost a few people, they brought back in a few people, and it's like they looked all right, and then you didn't know how much of a genuine leap Lamar would make, and he's obviously made it very genuine. Mark Ingram coming from the Saints, he was their second running back there. I thought he'd have a decent role, but he's been massive for the Ravens, and it's good to see that, once again, the NFL sticks up to its standards of not being predictable at all. Yeah,
absolutely. And, every week we get another shock to the system, essentially, and this was definitely it. We've been, I think it was only last week or the week before, I was reading out all the records.
Yeah,
the Patriots were on track for breaking or being close to it, and almost this game alone has thrown that completely out.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it, I think we're going to get into a bit more of the potentially long-term effects for both the Ravens and Patriots from this point. But you do look at the strength of schedule from the first half to the second half of the season for the Patriots, and there's a tremendous difference.
Yeah, exactly. And this is really where it's going to come down to, how legit is their defense, because they've had to face the Bills, the Jets, they've had the Giants, the Redskins, and now they've obviously lost to the Ravens. They've got a bye this week, but then they have to go play Philly, they have to play the Cowboys, then they have to go play the Texans, the Chiefs. They have a Bengals, Bills, Dolphins, so a fairly easy run home. But then they have they have their playoffs, and I mean, this is really going to be the test of whether this is a great all-time Patriots defense or whether it's just another really solid defense in the NFL
that continues to dominate their division and embarrass them.
Exactly, and it's impressive, really.
So playoffs this year. What, halfway through the season.
Yep.
Back to our predictions again. We'll plan on reviewing those since halfway through now. And what do you have changing to the end of the season?
Well, I have, in the AFC, I have the Pats, the Texans, the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Colts, and the Raiders actually making it into the playoffs. And I think right now, what's it looking like in the AFC? It's looking like Pats, Ravens, Texans, Chiefs, Buffalo, and the Colts will make it. So it's not too unsimilar. I think, one of the major things is I have the Patriots winning the conference at 13-3. I think, losing to Baltimore, that'll be their first loss. But then I also see them losing to my Cowboys potentially and the Texans the week after. But I just think, you look at the Patriots, they've obviously shown that they have one of the best defenses this year. And, going further down, you look at Texans, we have no idea what Deshaun Watson can do. He's still somehow winning them games. Their O-line's getting better, but it's still nowhere near good. JJ Watt's out, so really a lot of it is coming down to Deshaun, and he's still winning. And, you go further down, Chiefs still have Mahomes, Ravens have Lamar. Colts making it in as a 5th seed for me with no Andrew Luck, with him pulling out early in the year is even surprising me. I thought that when Andrew Luck retired that, the Colts had no chance, but the Raiders making it surprises me because the Steelers missing out is disappointing, but obviously Big Ben gets injured. But to me, the most disappointing factor, and I know we've already spoken about it multiple times, but the Browns not making the playoffs will be disappointing because this is a team that was so ridiculously hyped up. And I think really that's it. I think the AFC, like we said before we started recording, the AFC has been very disappointing this year.
Yeah, overall, there's a few people who have shone, but I think, with Patrick Mahomes being out for the Chiefs and, we still have them making the playoffs and finishing relatively high. But like you say, specifically the 3 of Steelers, Chargers and Browns not being in this contest is just blown everyone out of the water, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And, for the Steelers and the Chargers, it's pretty easy to point out why. It's, Melvin Gordon, the holdout that he had.
And, they've continued on with the injuries too.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Darwin James is still injured, which is, their number one safety. And Melvin Ingram, I think, was out for a few games, but he's back now and really put the pressure on Aaron Rodgers this week. But, injuries again have been a concern for him. But, on the other hand, I not stoked with it, but I just think the AFC is kind of rubbish. I actually still have Pittsburgh and Chargers making the playoffs. So my 1 to 6 is New England, Houston, Kansas City, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and Chargers. So I'm not actually super stoked that I have Steelers or Chargers making it because I think they are currently looking like some of the worst. They're great franchises and great teams, but playing some of the worst football.
Yeah.
Like, you look at Steelers as a Steelers fan. We are playing some rubbish football that's, we have to play because we're down to a 2nd-string quarterback with Big Ben out, and it's just a mess. And James Conner was out last week, and we still managed to grind a win against the Colts, which is great, but they were suffering from their own injuries.
Yeah.
And it is simply just a mess.
It is.
But I think we have a nice run in the second half. Like, the worst is definitely behind us. Like, we've had to verse, Patriots and 49ers and, a few big teams like that. It does get somewhat easier. Like, we've got the Rams this week, which is a big test.
Yeah.
But after that, we start to go into the Bengals and the Buffalo Bills and Jets and Arizona, which, with how poor we've been, could still be interesting games.
Yeah, exactly.
But, you'd expect them to get the wins in those games either. And I think the Chargers are relatively the same. Like, they've got a lot of 50-50 games and then some games that I expect them to cause an upset or so on and so forth. So who knows?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that sort of has, hurt these predictions is the Patriots we knew potentially were really going to have an easy opening schedule, but it's the people like the Steelers and, the Chargers who have faced the teams that really no one saw being as good as they are. like you said, the 49ers and stuff. And then obviously they've had to play Houston and stuff early. And, they've had injuries and issues with players holding out. I think that's definitely hurt these teams. But it's also, in a way, it's sort of shown how weak the AFC is this year too, because you have, Raiders who have been competitive so far this year. And, the Colts, realistically, as good as it is that Brissett's still in this position and the defense is still good, they had all the players around him. There's no way that the Colts should be in a good as position they are when they had their quarterback retire 4 days before the season started, or a week or whatever, a week and 4 days. It's just insane that injuries or whatever it has made the AFC as weak as it is. And that's what, thinking about it like this, it's what makes Cleveland's run even more disappointing. And not to get on the Browns anymore, but they haven't had any major injuries.
No.
I mean, I think they've had a couple of O-line injuries, but it didn't matter because we knew going into the season that, their O-line was as terrible as it was. And now it's actually turning out that, you can't just create a Madden team and expect it to work on the football field.
Just throw 50-yard touchdowns all game to OBJ and Landry.
And you look at the NFC and you think about the teams that have proven that. Saints barely made any moves in the offseason. Seahawks really didn't. Packers didn't either. The 49ers made a couple bringing in Tevin Coleman, but not moves that anyone looked at it and said, wow, that's a Super Bowl team now.
Yeah, for sure. And that makes a big change to this team and really steps them up to the next level. Yeah. No one's really done that.
Exactly. And somehow it's worked. Somehow, not making those moves has made the Saints, the Seahawks, the Packers, everything better. And the NFC is so competitive this year.
But I think we probably just run through a couple, probably our differences in the AFC first.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And the disappointment. So let's start off with the disappointments of the Browns. Where do you actually see them finishing in their final record?
Well, I have them finishing 7-9, and I think it's because obviously their schedule gets a lot easier from the first half as what it's turned out. But, I've got them losing to the Steelers. Well, I've got them beating the Bills this week, but then losing to the Steelers. But then they have to face the Dolphins, Steelers again, Bengals, Cardinals, and then the Ravens and the Bengals again. So really, it's a 50-50 schedule most of the way for the Browns, I believe. I think there is a couple of games that they won't win in there. I think the Steelers games are chuck-ups this year. I still think they are. Obviously, I think Pittsburgh is still favoured. That's why I've tipped them. But, I just think 7-9 is nowhere near what it should have been when I had them predicted to finish at 12-4 at the start of the year. And I think, how do you see the Browns finishing the rest of the year?
Well, funnily enough, I'm looking at your predictions compared to mine, and we're the exact same with every game. And, I look at the two Pittsburgh games, which at the start of the season and even after week 2, I would have had Browns winning both games for sure.
Yeah.
But Pittsburgh are good at everything Browns lack. Pittsburgh have a great pass rush, which Browns can't contain.
Yep.
And they've now, with Minkah Fitzpatrick coming in, which I think is one of the biggest kind of signings of the season.
Yep.
He's completely changed their team. If they get the pressure on and Minkah's sitting back watching and, Devin Bush is as quick as Chubb and probably able to keep up with him in that regards.
Yeah.
When the pressure comes on to Baker Mayfield, I think he's going to throw interceptions in this game.
Yeah.
And I still think our cornerbacks aren't the greatest in the league by far. And, you get one-on-ones with OBJ and Jarvis Landry. I think both of those receivers are going to win.
Yeah.
But I think we have great safeties that can sit back and cover it as well. So I think that's a big difference. And I think we both have them winning pretty much every other game besides the Cardinals, which we both actually see an upset coming, which I think is going to be a big shootout. And
it will be.
I don't know. I think Kyler Murray and, Cliff Kingsbury could have something special for the Browns.
Yeah, I think they will. I think at the end of the day, the Browns have just been stupid all year. I think the Titans game was what knocked them off their rocker. I think all off-season they would have been prepping that, we'll go in, bang the Titans, and then the rest of the year is ours. But the fact that they go in, concede so many penalties, just literally lost that game because of either poor defense or poor attack, and it's just continued, poor offensive play, line play, sorry, and it's just continued, has been what's hurt the Browns as much this year. And that's it really. That's why I think the Cardinals have beat them, is just because the Cardinals aren't exactly a perfect team, but they have structure and they have guidance and they know that they can't give away shit tons of penalties, and they don't. And that's what keeps them in games. And yeah, I think it's a disappointing year for the Browns. I think OBJ having Landry there keeps him there. I think they're both as happy as each other. I seen them, I don't know, it was OBJ's birthday the other day and Landry bought him some scooter, some orange scooter or whatever.
Nice.
So I think they're just goofing with each other. And I think the moment Freddie Kitchens gets out of there and they get, I don't know, any coach in who's had a couple years coaching experience and sets the structure, and even if they get worse players by name, sort of on their defense, but they actually play structured, I think that'll help the Browns.
It
but
certainly makes a big difference. But
yeah,
I think, maybe you read into it too much and the heat of the moment. I don't know if you caught any of the Browns-Broncos games, but I caught some of the last quarter. And one of the final plays, I think it was the last play the Browns actually had.
Yeah.
OBJ was wide open, would have actually been going for a touchdown, which would have won them the game. And Baker Mayfield just didn't pass it to him.
Wow.
Which I think it was just Baker Mayfield didn't see him more than anything.
Yeah.
But OBJ wasn't too happy about it either.
Yeah.
He didn't go off, but you could just see he wasn't impressed in a way. And, in that situation, you're on fourth. If you don't make this, you're turning the ball over on downs.
Yep.
You need to be throwing it to your number one receiver.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially when it's OBJ and one of the most impressive wide receivers in the league. But he didn't. He threw it to Landry, who's still great, but, he dropped the ball or got defended, and that was the end of their game. So I don't think look into it too much that there's turmoil, but I think there's just a lot of big heads in one room that things could turn around as well.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I know everyone else was talking about and I didn't really take into account at the start of the year was how many big heads the Browns have in that locker room. And it's tough to feed all those egos, but I mean, I don't know, man. At the end of the day, if you look and you watch, a lot of the NFL films seem to be like when coaches draw up plays or they start training camp, they tell their QB, this is what we've got planned, but this is where you sort of need to look because this is where we think it'll be. And I think Baker's playing scared. I think he's still running on emotion, and we've seen that when he had the altercation with the reporter after the game. But he's playing scared now because, he has to. He's been throwing picks. He has been playing very average, and regardless of whose fault that is, at the end of the day, he's still playing very averagely. And I think that's forced him to play scared, and that's probably why I didn't look for OBJ there. But I think, at the end of the day, if this continues in Cleveland, Odell's not going to get happy, and rightfully so. There's only so much shit you can take from franchises when it was meant to click. But just to get off the Browns for once, I think, Steelers and Chargers, like we sort of went into before, injuries, they've been banged up. I mean, I'm surprised you have them making the playoffs, really, but I think obviously...
I'm shocked I have them making the playoffs.
Yeah, I think obviously for me, I'd say that they make the playoffs because of their favourable divisions. Chargers have, who do they have? Broncos,
Raiders, and then Chiefs.
But sort of go into why... did we already talk about why you think Pitt and the Chargers will make the playoffs or not?
Spoke about it with Pittsburgh in regards, they just have a favourable schedule and they'll get up against the Browns, which might be a surprise. Chargers, we did about both of them.
Right.
It's that favourable schedule, and I think the fact that regression will occur and they're going to come back to the what you naturally expected from them. But I think as you switched over, I think I'm in a position where I need to eat my words a little bit about the Raiders, but I think I want to probably go into, people who just missed out in the Raiders and the Bills probably.
Yeah.
And I think, I have Oakland finishing 8-8 on the season.
Right.
Which I thought was completely impossible at the start of the season.
Me too.
So I'm extremely wrong there. But I think it also comes down to a few things. This season, two of their biggest shock wins were against Chicago and against Indianapolis.
Yeah.
Which at the start of the season, no one I think would have seen coming. Even the diehard fans are we're not going to win that. But like you said, 4 days before the season starts, Andrew Luck retires, and that changes that game for the Colts and Raiders.
Yeah.
Raiders now actually have a shot in that game against Jacoby Brissett, and they went and took it.
Mm-hmm.
And the Bears, who would have expected Trubisky to be this bad?
Yeah. No, I wouldn't have.
We didn't really rate Trubisky as a quarterback as was. I think in both of our, top 15 quarterbacks, Trubisky wasn't there.
No, he
or
wasn't.
even close to it. Probably.
I still have him. Well, I had him mid. I think we both had him sort of that mid level, but
yeah. And the thing is, it's like you expect him to get better. Like, you know, Lamar Jackson in probably a full season now has evolved tremendously.
Yeah.
Trubisky's going backwards.
Yeah.
And that led to a somewhat easy win for the Raiders. Like, they just ran on Bears all game and won there. And, you know, if those two games go the way we expected, they are now 2-6. And, you know, we're probably expecting them to finish 4-12 or something the way we did think. Even with the favourable second half schedule, still probably think they're, you know, not finishing greatest. But this is one thing, like, after my predictions with all the games running by, something I thought was really interesting was that against winning teams, like, so, you know, obviously you have a winning team and losing team on the entire schedule.
Yeah.
Against winning teams, I have them going 0-7.
Wow.
Against a winning team, I don't have them winning a single game.
Yeah.
Which I'm not surprised by either.
No.
Like, maybe one or two, but I'm not surprised by that because I don't think they're a great team. I think they're starting to get some really good assets. They're finding who they are.
Yeah.
And that's a lot because of John Gruden. And, you know, that's something to get excited for.
Yeah.
But I still don't think they're a great team. And not being able to win against a winning team, in my eyes, I think shows that where they're 8-1 against losing teams. And that's what carries them through their schedule.
Yeah. And obviously, I have the Raiders sneaking into the playoffs as a 10-6 team, but it remains the same for me. I have them 8-1 against losing teams, and I think that's a product of their placement. Not only, you know, because the AFC's been a bit shit this year, but also because, you know, like they have had a couple of lucky wins, really.
Yeah.
And like you said, they are finding their identity, and I think that's really going to come out over the next 6-7 weeks. And I have them sneaking in. I just think it's impressive that, you know, you look at the Raiders, they had all the turmoil with Antonio Brown. And then, you know, they've had Tyrell Williams out injured a couple of weeks, and yet they still continue to be not only competitive but win.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
You know, you look at their defense, you can't really point to one person who's an X factor on that defense. Like,
no.
Cleveland Farrell hasn't really clicked. You know, they had a couple of other defensive linemen who shone in the preseason and on Hard Knocks, Max Crosby and stuff, who haven't really shone either. Like, it's really just a product of their surroundings and how easy their schedule, like their run home is. And that's why I have them sneaking in, actually. But, I mean, yeah, it's impressive that they've done it. But I think, like you said, it's against losing teams. This isn't a legit team. This is just a team which has capitalized on all the opportunities and obviously downfalls with losing Antonio that they've had and somehow made something of it. So it's impressive. But if they make it into the playoffs like they do in mine, I've got them. They're most likely going to get blown out. But, I mean, it's still impressive that they made it this far.
And that's the thing I just wanted to point out too. They have a nice run home, but it's a lot of 50-50 games.
Yep.
And this is a thing where they could, they could make the playoffs, I think, or they could end up finishing with a negative record.
Yeah, that's
and not
it.
be great. Like, you know, you look, I think in my eyes, in the final games, I think there's 6 games left.
Yeah.
They are guaranteed to win one against the Bengals more than likely, lose one against the Chiefs more than likely, and then it's like 50-50 games. Like, they got 2 games against the Chargers, game against Titans, Jacksonville, Jets, and the Broncos, which they probably beat the Broncos too.
Yeah.
But they have a lot of 50-50 games. So it's just going to depend on that game script that we talk about.
Yeah.
And, you know, who's injured for that game or
exactly
that area. So I think a lot's going to come down to it, but this could be a team that sneaks into the playoffs for sure.
They've Stephen Bradbury'd the whole competition.
Oh, absolutely.
Like,
that's what it is. Everyone's fallen over around them. They're like, all right, we'll keep winning.
And they've done it with one skate since they lost Antonio. But I mean, like, it's really impressive. And I think I'm surprised that you have the Bills making the playoffs. Do you?
No, they just missed out. But, you know, in real life, without looking at their schedule, I think they do sneak in.
Yeah.
I think they probably sneak in with a 9-7, which I have them finishing 9-7, but I have Pittsburgh and Chargers finishing 10-6, which I don't think I see happening.
Yeah, and this is one of the tough things that...
sorry to cut you off.
No,
I just think I see a lot of teams finishing 9-7, 8-8.
Yeah.
That's what I think this is, where I think when we go to the NFC, it's a lot of teams that are going to have some really high records. And according to ours, which I think are very, you know, off slightly.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of teams with good records that aren't making the playoffs in our eyes on that side. where I think, I think the top four are kind of set in stone in the AFC. Like New England, Houston, Kansas City, and Baltimore are going to make it through. I think we can safely agree on that.
Mm-hmm.
But those two wild card spots, Pittsburgh, Chargers, Bills, Oakland, Colts, and probably even Cleveland if they can get things right. And, if they win those two games against Steelers, they're now 9-7. Steelers are out and they make it.
Exactly.
So there's a lot riding on, but I think there's, the 4 guaranteed, and then there's probably, there's 2, 4, 6 teams in contention for that playoff spot still.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that we sort of have to give, a warning to is when we're making these predictions, you're going week by week. We can't really keep account of momentum when we're trying to predict, the whole results over a league for a week. And you can't really take into fact upsets. It's, we're comparing one team to the other and this is what we have them at now. This is what they should be, and I think we have tried to put a few upsets in there that we think will happen. But at the end of the day, like you said, the AFC's top 4 is set in stone, basically. I still think the Colts will push the Texans, but I think really there's 4, if you count the Colts 2 on top, that's 5 teams that are definitely good in the AFC. And I think everyone else performance is just a product of either their downfall and the factors around that, or a product of like everyone else's downfall. Like you look at the Raiders and stuff. But I mean, getting over to the NFC, man, it's stacked this year, and
it's ridiculous on this side.
I've got 2 teams going 14-2.
I don't have a team going 14-2, but looking at your top 6 and mine, they are stacked.
Yeah,
absolutely stacked. Like, I don't think we'd doubt if you told me any of these teams would have made the Super Bowl. Wouldn't be surprised. Even if you potentially said 7 and 8 in my eyes, which are the Vikings and Eagles missing out. If you told me one of those were going to be in the Super Bowl, I'd be like, wow, bit of a shock, but they're a great team. And
you could see it.
Not necessarily. Exactly. I could see that happening. If they turn this second half of the season around, they could be Super Bowl contenders.
Yeah.
But everyone making the playoffs, where the AFC, it's like, I don't see Pittsburgh or Chargers going anywhere near the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I see them getting knocked out straight away. And the other 4 teams, I think it just comes down to your day. But like start of the season, you could almost safely say Patriots are going to be there. Almost without question, just because
it's the Pats.
It's the Pats, exactly. They always make it happen somehow, some way.
Yeah, and I mean, you're right. That's the ridiculous thing, is that even the non-playoff teams that we have finishing lower in the NFC could make a run and could potentially go to a... And it's ridiculous that it's like... It just shows you how competitive the NFC is. But again, I think, like we did with the other side, I think we'll list my NFC predictions. I have the Saints finishing first on 14-2, then the Seahawks on 14-2. I've got the Packers on 13-3. My Cowboys going 12-4. I've then got the 49ers and the Rams 5th and 6th on 11-5. But then, I have the Vikings missing. I have the Eagles missing. Yeah, mine's really top heavy. I've got Vikings missing, Eagles missing, Lions missing, Panthers. And I think the 2 most disappointing for both of us in our predicted is Falcons and Bears. I think the Bears defense...
Shockingly.
...is... The Bears defense, if they had a decent if they had Tom Brady at quarterback...
If they had a quarterback...
Yeah. The Bears defense would be in the same position that the Pats are now. Just because that's how good it is, in my opinion.
I think arguably Bears are definitely in top 3.
Yeah.
But could easily, under the right circumstances, be the number 1 or number 2 defense.
Yeah.
Like, I don't see any reason why they couldn't be better than San Fran. And Patriots are elite, but Bears were not quite, but almost this elite last season anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, above and beyond.
Yeah, and that's what's so disappointing about the Bears, is that their quarterback has failed them this year. This is the first year where I've really gone and said, like, he's a young guy, and normally I like giving young guys chances. Mitchell Trubisky has been completely dog shit this year. Like, he has been absolutely terrible. And I think that that's really what's cost the Bears so much is, I've got them finishing 5-11. Near the Giants, near the Cardinals. It's like, my goodness. And we obviously outlined early in the year too that the NFC North is one of the most competitive divisions in football, but there's no way that you look at the Lions defense and say it's definitively worse than Minnesota's. Then, you look at the Bears and say it's worse than the Lions or the Vikings or even worse than the Packers, I think.
it's better than all of them.
Exactly. And it's just the fact that Trubisky hasn't done anything. And, I think the Falcons is in the opposite. Their offense is still clicking. Matt Ryan's putting up 30 points in losses, but their defense couldn't stop a bunch of 5-year-olds running through them, I think. And
yeah, like once again, same as last season. And, when we did the predictions originally, I said that the reasons why Falcons didn't make it this year were the injuries.
Yep.
And these injuries have reoccurred.
Yeah,
and
right.
That's why they're doing so poorly. Like, Keanu Neal and, a few people like that are injured once again.
Yep.
And it's tremendous the difference it makes.
Yeah.
Like your team goes from being solid. Like you look at their offense, between Matt Ryan, Julio Jones. Devontae Freeman wasn't great to start the season, but's found his own now.
Yep.
They've got Calvin Ridley. They had Mohamed Sanu, who they've now traded off because they're tanking, essentially.
Such a weird move, but for the Falcons anyway. But sorry, go on.
It doesn't seem to make sense for the Falcons.
It doesn't.
But anyway, they've got such a high-powered offense. They still lack at O-line, but they made moves in the draft this season, and I'm pretty sure they're going to next season as well to continue to protect Matt Ryan.
Yeah.
But, I also have them finishing 4-12.
Yeah, I've got them going. I have them going 2-14, man.
2-14 for the Falcons that should have been in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's really disappointing. I think this is one of those things where their squad hasn't really changed that much since they last made the Super Bowl. So they have a Super Bowl contending squad, and they have a bunch of guys who know how to get there, but they just can't, win anywhere. And looking at your predictions, obviously, the most disappointing fact is that my Falcons, I have them going 1-6 against losing teams. And what do you have your Falcons going against? Your predictions for them against losing?
2-3.
2-3.
Actually. And 2-9 against winnings.
Damn. So, just can't win it all. And that sucks. It really sucks for the Falcons. I think the Vikings, if they just miss out for either of us, I think that's really undeserved. I think the Eagles aren't a playoff contention team this year.
Eagles have definitely underperformed, and I think that's once again due to injuries. But the thing I wanted to say earlier is if Vikings and Eagles were in the AFC, they would no doubt about it both have those wildcard positions.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like, that's my dead set opinion. If those were on the other side of the competition, that's 5 and 6 wildcard.
Yeah.
Picked up and could potentially, I don't think they'd make the Super Bowl from that side, but
they'd be competitive.
Could make it through the wild card potentially.
Yeah, exactly.
Put pressure on those big teams.
And that just shows you how much of an influence. Like, I really feel like when it comes to playoff time, this is going to show the indication of competition all year. And I get that, teams are still winning big in the AFC and stuff. But at the end of the day, like, you think about it, San Fran has to play the Seahawks and the Rams they've had to play them 4 times this year.
Yep.
That's 4 games where their coaches, everyone has had to gear up to be ready to face, potentially 2 of the other best teams in the NFC. That's a lot of preparation and a lot of time spent to get ready. And even the Vikings have had a hard matchup. They've had the Lions, they've had the Bears, whose defense is still hard to plan for, on the Packers. Like you said before, the AFC has definitely been weaker, and the Vikings and the Eagles would potentially be wild cards in that division. But we don't even have them making the playoffs in the NFC predictions. And, that's just a credit to the NFC. And I think the one thing that I'm surprised about with how, the early season struggles to the Rams and sort of finding out who Jared Goff truly is, I think them bouncing back to go 11-5 would be somewhat impressive. Obviously, they were Super Bowl contenders last year, but everyone's sort of starting to figure out Jared Goff, and Todd Gurley being injured isn't helping.
Yep, exactly. And they've seemed to, he's still doing a lot, but like Aaron Donald's been shut down most games, which, wasn't the case last season. So a big change for Rams, but I think they'll still get it done.
Yeah, I think they will too. But the Rams, just to go on to them, I think letting go of, Ndamukong Suh, I know he wasn't an elite pass rusher when he come in, and he still wasn't.
Big difference.
It makes a massive difference because, now you can safely double team Aaron Donald without a threat that someone else is going to come through that line. And I think that's...
Dante Fowler's good.
Yeah.
But he's not... He just didn't have that presence in Ndamukong Suh. I think just being that big man made a huge difference.
Yeah, exactly. As Brock gets up to switch the camera back on. But I think, 49ers too, you look at them and they've got a D-line that you can't shut down. And we're good, Chief. But that's the thing. Like the Rams D-line can sort of get shut down now, which has hurt their passing game. But the 49ers don't have a D-line that you can shut down. And I think, surprisingly, you've got them topping the NFC at 13-3. I've got them finishing 5th on 11-5, thanks to how competitive that NFC West is. But, we spoke about it before. The 49ers have been terrible for years. And for years and years, they've consistently picked D-linemen with high first-round draft picks. And suddenly now, for some reason this year, it's all come together. And, you combine that with the fact that they picked up Garoppolo a few years ago and they've picked up Tevin Coleman last year in free agency, so their running back room is a lot stronger now. And it's sort of getting back to, Kyle Shanahan's strength is a really deep, decent running back room and a programmable quarterback that has the potential to show the X factor. Combine that with a really unstoppable front four, Richard Sherman and some of the other secondary players playing out of their skin. This is a San Fran team that could really impress. And obviously I have them going 11-5 because now they're getting into their real test of the year. In the next 6-7 games, they have to face the Seahawks twice. They have to face the Saints, the Ravens, and the Packers. It's a real rough ride home for the 49ers. But again, this will show how legit they are. But still, they have all the ingredients for a Super Bowl winning team.
Yep, absolutely.
So I don't know. How do you feel about the 49ers?
Well, I just wanted to quickly run through as well my side of it.
Oh, yes,
I have
sorry.
San Fran finishing first on 13-3, New Orleans 13-3, Green Bay 12-4, Dallas 10-6, and then in the wild card, both from the NFC West, I think it is, Seahawks 12-4 and the Rams 11-5.
Wow. So just as strong, really.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's not quite as top heavy as yours.
Yeah.
But it's the exact same top six with the exact same, Minnesota, Philly, Carolina, and Detroit just missing out. Like, I think this is kind of not set in stone, but it's pretty close to it.
Yeah.
Predictable how this is going to finish. It's just going to be who gets those top 2 seeds and gets that bye week and who's going to be stuck in the wild card position.
Exactly. And I think the biggest thing coming out of that NFC West is obviously 49ers playing Seahawks twice in the last couple of weeks. Really decides who tops that division and potentially who tops the NFC. And like you said, having home field advantage and having the bye week is going to be massive for this team because it means, if Green Bay gets caught down in 4th or something, then, if 49ers get the bye week and they have to face Green Bay in San Fran, that's a lot more favorable than them having to travel to, Green Bay or anything. And I think Cowboys are there. I'm backing the boys, but at the end of the day, you look at them, they're definitely the odd one out in this top 6 for the NFC.
I agree. And, if it goes the way we're predicting, it's the first time since 2004 that someone in that division's won it twice in a row.
Wow.
So that's going to be a big deal and almost in a way makes me go, because I actually have Dallas and Philadelphia both finishing on 10-6.
Wow.
But Cowboys squeeze through, I'm assuming, because of head-to-head.
Yep.
But I actually think quite easily Dallas could miss it and Philadelphia could be in.
Exactly.
But it's just going to come down to this last stretch. You got Philadelphia who, New England, Seahawks, they've still got to face. And then Cowboys in week 16, but then a very easy schedule like Miami, Washington, and Giants twice compared to Dallas who, Detroit, Buffalo, New England, Chicago, Rams, Philly, Washington. I'm
going to say that's a lot of 50-50 games for Dallas. I'm not a massive fan. I've seen their defense this year. It's massively regressed from last year.
And Minnesota as well. You look at off the bye week, I think, off the bye week, you're probably a little more chilled out coming in and so on and so forth. But they didn't look good against the Giants whatsoever.
No, they didn't.
Especially that first half, I definitely think the Giants got the better of the Cowboys.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until late in that second half that Dallas just kind of showed their dominance and a few things went right and blew them out, and won convincingly.
Exactly. And I think, that's really the telltale sign of the Cowboys and Eagles season is how they're going to run home. And the Cowboys having a lot of 50-50 games to get home. And as a Cowboys fan, I'm optimistic. I still think that they will top the division. But at the end of the day, regardless of whether it's Philly or the Cowboys that make it in, I think I'd rather have the Cowboys just as a general fan. I think Dallas can put up a much more of a fight. I think we've got a lot more weapons that are harder to shut down than Philly. But either way, both of our defenses have regressed this year, and it's disappointing the sort of performances that they put up. But, you go into it, if the Cowboys have to face the if the Cowboys have to face the 49ers, even at home, that's a tough ask. And on your side of the schedule, they have to face the Seahawks.
Yeah.
Even if you sub in Philly, Philly has to go play the 49ers with a banged up secondary.
Or the Seahawks.
It's not going to be pretty for any of the NFC East. And again, this is the same thing we said about the AFC. This is a product of these teams are not going to be as sharpened in the playoffs because Dallas and Philly can easily and have easily for the past few years chalked up 4 easy wins a year, 2 against New York, 2 against Washington. And we're doing and have done the exact same thing this year.
Yep.
Even when we didn't play good for the first half into the third quarter, we still somehow win 37-18, Dallas that is, over the Giants the other day.
And even, same thing, first game of the season, Redskins were dominating the Eagles. Mm-hmm. And then it wasn't until Wentz came back and, I don't think they scraped away a win. But a few things, if they went differently, Redskins would have won that game.
Exactly.
Which now would look insane. But, yeah, you pretty much have, let's just assume those 4 wins are wins, and then they get 1 each either way. That's 5-1 they're sitting at, and they only need to win. They need to go 4-6, 5-5.
Yeah.
And they're in a fantastic position to make the playoffs. Unfortunately, that's not the case this year because, going 5-5 puts them at 10-6 like we predict them, and they're either just missing out or just scraping in.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely the odd division out this year. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. And I think, that just shows that I feel like either one of those teams, due to their defense, will most likely have a shit ton of points hung up on them in the wildcard round. And ultimately, Wentz and Dak have shown that they're, good quarterbacks, and they do have a little bit of X factor, but they're good enough. I don't think they're, you can't overcome Aaron Rodgers. You can't overcome San Fran. You can't beat Russell Wilson with just Dak and Wentz doing stuff on their own. And I think that's the most disappointing part. But, even going into it, I have the Saints going 14-2, which...
That's what I was going to say is the biggest one. I think we're confident. The run they've gone on with Teddy Bridgewater and not Drew Brees, and they've still come out on the side.
Exactly.
Massive. I think, they're guaranteed to be right up there. I think the biggest thing comes down to whether or not they finish in the top 2.
Yes.
And they've got home.
Yes.
If they're at home in the Dome, Saints look 10 times better just because the opposition quarterback pretty much can't even hear themselves think.
Yeah. That's how ridiculous the Saints home crowd is.
It's crazy. There's few stadiums that can do it, but in these Dome stadiums, you just listen to the difference. Go watch a game and you have the Saints are on the ball and it's relatively quiet.
Yeah.
Everyone communicates well. If something needs to be changed in the play, Drew Brees calls it in. It's all good.
Yeah.
It's fine. He audibles, all good, sorts itself out, makes a lovely first down, great play.
Yeah.
The opposition can't even hear his communications between him and the head coach because they are so loud, the home fans, when away's on the ball, and they just can't do anything.
Yeah.
You can't audible. You end up calling a bunch of timeouts that you shouldn't, or get delay games.
Yeah.
And, you're just marching back on the field continuously because you can't hear yourself.
Yeah.
And that's going to make a huge difference. And over the past few years, Saints have not necessarily, but, quotation, been screwed out of the past few years. The Minneapolis Miracle, Diggs going for a 50-yard touchdown or whatever it was out of nowhere was unbelievable. And then last year, the pass interference that didn't get called, and rules have been changed because of that.
Yeah.
Not that the callings on the field get changed too often, but, every year Saints are one of the most dangerous teams. But can this year finally go right, or is there something else that they complain about?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think, this year is, and, you look at Drew Brees, most of the time he wears down because he's an older quarterback. But at this point, and he has had a thumb injury, but he's had 4, 5, 6 weeks off. He's really only got to play a full season. So he's not going to get that burn and that dip that he normally gets around playoff time where his arm starts to sag because he's, 40, 41. This is potentially the Saints, if they finish first or second, or hopefully third or fourth, if it falls to that. so that they have home field advantage in whatever they have to play. This is the best outcome that the Saints could have hoped for, and I want them to finish first in the division. I think it's just as likely that they do finish first or second, but you're right. Getting that home field advantage and having the quarterback with his hands on his helmet screaming, "I can't hear you, can you say it louder?" It's massive. And, if the Saints are a 14-2 or even like what...
I've got them 13-3.
Like 13-3 team, New Orleans is going to be going off, and it's going to be amazing to see if they make the Super Bowl. And by all means, this is a Super Bowl. This is a heavily Super Bowl contending team. This is a team that, with Teddy Bridgewater, who had really, not really proven himself up to this point in his career, still won games without Drew Brees with Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback. It's impressive.
Yeah, like they are a team that has one of the best defensive lines in the entire league.
Yeah.
And, Drew Brees is still one of the best quarterbacks. And, going back to the whole injury, he's going to hit the playoffs and essentially be in mid-season form.
Exactly.
And still healthy, ready to go.
Yeah.
Where he's normally, there's a huge dip. Like, I'm not sure about the exact statistics, but he essentially goes from like 275 passing yards on average at the start of the season down to like 200 by playoffs.
Yeah.
Because he just can't.
Yeah, he can't hit those
anymore.
long balls, yeah.
And they're not going to come across these issues. But I think we probably fast forward a little bit and head into the playoff situations. What do we think's happening there?
In the actual playoffs?
Yes.
Well, we'll
quickly run through. I think we've explained where we stand with a lot of these teams.
Yeah.
Where do we think it's going to lead to?
Well, I think wildcards in the AFC, I have the Ravens facing the Colts at the 4-5 playoff, and then Chiefs Raiders at 3-6. I have the Ravens and the Chiefs beating winning those two games, and then on the other side,
I'm the same, except I have Pittsburgh and Chargers in those wild card positions. But once again, I have Baltimore and Chiefs winning. I think they're by far the best teams. I think the wild card teams, whoever it is that makes it, don't stand a chance in this game.
Yeah, exactly. And then I think on the other side, I have Cowboys facing 49ers. I have the 49ers winning that one, and Packers facing the Rams, Packers we didn't touch on, but we know Aaron Rodgers, decent enough defense, run game's coming up.
Everything's going right.
Yep.
I think Chargers definitely showed, being a poor team, they showed how to beat Green Bay though.
Yeah,
I think it makes Green Bay beatable, which I didn't think a few weeks ago.
Right.
But I still think they're one of the best teams.
Yep.
I think, Jared Goff away is usually not as good as at home, and I think Aaron Rodgers is just going to eat him alive pretty much. And
exactly.
I'm the same. I got that Green Bay Rams game, same as you, but then I got Dallas Seahawks, but, same situation. I think Seahawks winning that game.
And then obviously going into the divisional or whatever it's called round, I've got Chiefs and Texans is my 2-3 playoff. I have the Chiefs winning. And then Ravens Patriots is my 1-4 playoff in the AFC, and I have the Ravens winning that one.
Okay, so I'm in the exact same situation as you. After all that, again, I have Houston and Chiefs. It's going to be one of the most interesting games of this season.
It will be.
That's for sure. Like, they've previously had this game, and Texans won 31-24. So maybe that has something to do with it. But I think Chiefs probably get up in this game, But in that game, Tyreek Hill was still out, and Patty Mahomes was nursing an injury, but still looked all right. But I think Chiefs win. And then, New England, Baltimore. I think New England win it, though.
Yeah.
I think New England always perform, if you beat New England in the season, you normally don't beat them in the playoffs because they know the way you play, they know your style, they know what to expect. Even though it's Lamar Jackson, who's the most unpredictable quarterback in the league.
Yeah, right now, exactly.
I think they can still get it done, no doubt about it. And, one thing I didn't touch on, I'm very quickly going to mention, was when the Ravens beat the Patriots this week,
right.
Ravens were on their bye week.
Right.
And if you watch that game, every single play they made looked heavily scripted. Like they knew what they were doing before they walked onto the field. I wouldn't be surprised if they almost ran through the 60 minutes of what was going to happen every play they made, every step of the way.
Yeah, exactly.
That's just the way it looked. Like, they counted New England really well. But I think after a beating from whether it's the Chargers or the Bills or the Steelers or whoever it's going to be, I don't know if they're going to be able to bounce back that same way they did against the Patriots.
Yeah. And I think obviously on the other side, I have Seahawks, Packers is my 2-3 playoff, and then Saints 49ers is my 1-4. I have the Seahawks beating the Packers. Really, that just comes down to home field advantage. That's going to be a really great game. And then I've got the Saints beating the 49ers. I think, like we mentioned before, Saints will have a week off. They'll have to face 49ers at home. 49ers have to travel to New Orleans. Yeah, it's just going to be really interesting. But I think Saints win that one.
Yep. I got a different situation on this side. I got New Orleans versus Green Bay, but once again, same reasoning. I have New Orleans winning this game just at home. It's unbeatable, and Aaron Rodgers, as fantastic as he is, I just don't think he's going to be able to do it against the Saints in the Dome. So I think that's a big reason why they're. And then I have San Fran and Seahawks, which I sit back and I'm kind of slightly, I don't know, taken aback, confused, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
Because San Fran and Seahawks at this point will have versed each other 3 times.
Yeah.
And I think just because I think Seahawks are the better team, I have them winning all 3.
And we haven't seen any of those games yet either.
Yep, which I don't see happening. I don't know if it's going to be this game or it's going to be one of the games in the season, which change off the playoff picture completely. I think Seahawks are the better team just because of Russell Wilson.
Right.
But that's one man you're relying a lot upon.
Yeah.
So I think somewhere this falters, but I do still have the Seahawks winning.
Yeah, and I think that's, we haven't seen them play yet, so that's what we have to go off is that, Russell Wilson is a better quarterback. But, I mean, going into the conference, I've got Chiefs-Ravens for mine. Obviously, you'll have Chiefs-Pats, but I've got the Chiefs beating the Ravens, and then I've got Saints-Seahawks in my playoff, and I've got the Saints winning because they're at home again. So, I mean, yeah, like it is. I mean, Mahomes versus Lamar is going to be insane if we get that matchup. I think the fact that Mahomes maybe has more weapons around him that are more established gives him the edge over Lamar. And you also think about the fact that, Saints again are at home. I think Russell Wilson can definitely take it to the Saints if they get that far, but I just want New Orleans in the final, so I'm going to pick them over them.
Finally get that redemption they've been coming for
for
so long.
Yeah, exactly. And my Super Bowl will be Saints-Chiefs. Well, what do you think yours will be?
I've got a repeat of last year with New England beating Chiefs in the championship.
Mm-hmm.
I think, something we didn't really touch on too much, but it's not going to be the case until now. Mahomes still hasn't beaten a top quarterback.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's going to happen here. I think once again, it's pretty much going to be the exact same as last year.
Yep.
Andy Reid's not going to be able to manage time. Bill Belichick just comes out phenomenal, shuts down Tyreek.
Yep.
Kelsey gets a man on him, and Patriots come out on the other side on top. And then I have Seahawks beating the Saints. I think this is where Saints falter.
Yeah.
And I think they just can't contain Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Once again, back to the fact that I think he's the MVP. I just don't think anyone can stop him. I know he's lost a few games this season, but I don't think it's down to him.
No, exactly.
And, something we haven't touched on, but Josh Gordon picking him up on waiver claims, that's a huge boost to their squad.
If it works out, it's massive. And anyway, you still look at it if it doesn't work out. This is a gamble by the Seahawks, and it's a win-win gamble. If he doesn't work out, they've shown that they can be fine without him. But if it works out, this is essentially DK Metcalf with more experience. Yep. This is a guy who can go deep, a guy who can go up and get the 50-50 ball. It opens up more. It'll open up way more for Tyler Lockett, potentially.
Between Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, and Josh Gordon, you're now looking at one of the best receiver corps
potentially,
in the league.
Yeah. And, you already look at, the combination that Lockett and Ross have. That's one of the best combinations for a quarterback and a receiver in the league. You add another weapon to that on top of a promising rookie. It's really impressive. So I think, either way, a Saints-Seahawks NFC title game is going to be ridiculously good to watch.
And, the difference is too, I think, just with Russell Wilson and why he can do it where other teams can't. I can't remember what game it is exactly, and I don't know if you do. But there was a game in which Russell Wilson's headset wasn't working at all. Couldn't hear Pete Carroll throughout the entire drive and led them to a touchdown.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. Just great throws, great plays, great team coordination. And that was without the quarterback. And I think, there was even, games in the preseason where he was calling plays. And, he is at that quality and that capability that even with all the noise, I think he's the best quarterback to have there.
Exactly. He's been in that Seahawks system that long that he knows what he's got to do. And I think, my Super Bowl is Saints-Chiefs, which I know you're not a massive fan of because that's what everyone has wanted since the start of the year. And I sort of want to see it too. But I think genuinely a Seahawks-New Orleans, a Seahawks-New England Super Bowl that you have predicted would be ridiculous since it's a matchup of Super Bowl a couple of years back. But I mean, I've got the Saints winning the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. I just think if
they finally get it done,
if that's who it comes down to, Sean Payton, Drew Brees, Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas, the planning, I think it takes out. It's the same reason that, like you've said, the Pats will most likely beat the Chiefs if they meet in the AFC thing, is just Mahomes is still too explosive. He's still a second-year guy who's making plays, but there's not much you can do when you come out, you're down by 3, you come out and throw an 88-yard touchdown to Tyreek Hill with 4 minutes left on the clock, and then you get these experienced teams like the Saints or the New England or Seahawks just grind it out against you. And I think, I've got Saints winning for that reason. But, Seahawks, New England, what's your breakdown on your Super Bowl final, man?
Yeah, no, once again, my bias and love of Russell Wilson MVP comes through, and I have Seahawks winning it. I think, Patriots, I think this year have to falter somewhere.
Right.
And I don't think I've thought that in too many seasons, and we could both quite easily be wrong, and Tom Brady and the Patriots go for their 7th ring, and that would be, most in the franchise in history, and just be beyond stupid and crazy. But, I have Seahawks winning it. I think Patriots are beatable in certain circumstances, and I think a quarterback like this, that you don't know what's going to happen in Russell Wilson, dancing around the pocket and making runs when he needs to, he can beat the Patriots. And, ideal scenario, as I was talking to you about prior, we're going to have Seahawks and New England in a Super Bowl, and we're going to watch Josh Gordon go for a 50-yard touchdown to win the game.
That'd be magic.
And, rub it into Patriots' faces for letting him go.
Yeah.
That's ideal and would be hilarious to see. But, I got Seahawks winning it. I think Saints, you can confidently say that. Like, they've been phenomenal this season, and you can really see why Saints could win the Super Bowl.
Yep.
I do sit back, and I think Seahawks, Russell Wilson's the best quarterback. They've got a great wide receiver corps, with Bobby Wagner and Jadeveon Clowney. They've got some great bits. And I think just if it comes down to a shootout, Russell Wilson will win.
Yeah.
And I think that's the scenario we're playing at. I just don't know if I see Seahawks even making the Super Bowl. A lot's got to go right. But Russell Wilson can do it too.
Yeah. And
there's no other quarterback I'd rather in that situation.
Oh, no. Exactly. 100%. The more I think about it and the more I take my bias out of it, I would love to see either the Seahawks or the Saints play New England in the final. I think the Seahawks, if they make it, can definitely beat the Pats, because I think the fact that the Pats for the first 8 weeks of the season were not relying, but, they get 2 touchdowns from the defense, nearly a touch, or at least a touchdown a game from the defense. They're already 7 points up. They go out and kick a field goal. They're 10 points up. Their defense suffocates it. All they had to do was run. I think the Patriots haven't had a chance this year to iron out their kinks on offense, and I think that showed against the Ravens.
Not.
And that could be why, if the Seahawks or the Saints face them, they could win in the Super Bowl, and that way it makes it so impressive. So, more I take my bias out of it, man, I'd love to see Seahawks New England as a final, genuinely.
I'm happy to see Patriots in the Super Bowl as long as they don't win.
Exactly. And, that's a risky run.
I don't really like the Saints overly, and a few of the other teams that could make it from that side, but I'd probably support any of them if it means going against the Patriots.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I guess, that sort of wraps it up. I mean, disappointing from the Browns. Predictions at the start of the year don't really matter for the teams that aren't making playoffs. Like, we knew the Jags probably weren't going to succeed and all this, and I mean, we didn't really touch on where we thought they'd finish and where we have them finishing in the end, but it doesn't matter. Like,
and the truth is, we're going to get to the end of this season, and this looks great right now. It's going to be completely different. Like, we could dead set have 3 different teams than what we've predicted right now.
Oh,
and,
no.
we have the same NFC relatively.
Mm-hmm.
We could see something change there, and the AFC, we think a lot of people are set in stone. Then the wildcards are out there. Who knows? It's the NFL. We're clueless.
Yeah.
You're clueless. It doesn't matter. You have a quarterback from any of these teams go down and they don't make it, or aren't a big deal anymore. Even San Fran, like someone like Nick Bosa goes down, who's been phenomenal in the past, right? Changes the outlook of the team. Like, Seahawks, Tyler Lockett goes down. They still have 2 great wide receivers, but who's going to be that possession wide receiver?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, so many things can change. Like, we're only halfway through the season, but I think things are starting to shape up. We can see where things are going.
Yeah, exactly. And that'll be
to make a much more reasonable prediction.
Yeah, and that'll be the fun thing to come back and revise at the end of the year. Is what happened and where did we go wrong? But this has been fun. I don't think there's I mean, Rugby World Cup finals are on the weekend, I think. Is there anything else you want to say about NFL before we move on? Or
No, I think that's a good note to wrap it up on.
Yeah, and, Wales got smashed by New Zealand. England got beat by South Africa. I didn't expect it to be that much, but obviously England had played their World Cup final the week before by beating New Zealand. And
yeah, that's honestly bigger than the World Cup.
Yeah.
Like, beating New Zealand in that scenario
is massive.
Is tremendous, and sadly that is almost bigger than the World Cup.
Yeah, it really is. And no one's going to talk about it now because, they ended up losing the World Cup final.
Oh, yeah, that's right. It could have been the fairy tale run to the end of it, but yeah, that's definitely their grand final and highlight in a way. Like, I almost walk away and think it's bigger that England beat New Zealand than South Africa winning the World Cup.
Yeah, it really is, because at the end of the day, England just, I don't know, they looked like they were spent. They didn't care. They just looked like, really like they'd played the World Cup final the week before. And I think if it had turned out way better and New Zealand and England somehow had have made it to the World Cup final, I think, if South Africa beats New Zealand and everything else goes the same way, we get the World Cup final, that would have made it better. But instead we got South Africa kicking England out of the game, and I mean, it wasn't, and New Zealand running over Wales like they do. They bounce back, and that's it really. There's not too much else.
But, proudly, as, I don't know, not supporting either of these teams, I can still sit back and proudly say Southern Hemisphere won it.
Exactly.
So
that's a positive.
Nice one. The memes coming around of, Northern Hemisphere asking why.
Yeah.
Why do you think we're better than them? And, we're sitting there with all the World Cups around us between Australia, South Africa and New Zealand. But, sitting pretty.
Here we are. And
congrats to the Southern Hemisphere.
Exactly. And I think that's it, Yeah. Sweet. So hopefully the video has gone well. Hopefully the autofocus hasn't messed up or anything. But, this was fun. Another podcast done. We are now officially, 3 months? 3 months into it? If
Pretty
12
much.
episodes is one a week. Yeah.
Yep.
So we're having fun. We're cruising. Shout out to the Instagram at @nooneasked_podcast.
Nailed it.
I got it right.
And, getting to new areas. We're on camera now.
Let's go. So hopefully the performance anxiety wasn't too bad, but thanks for listening, peeps.
Sweet. Cheers.